Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Podward State. I'm one of your hosts, Matt Paolizzi.
I'm Sam Brungo, and joining us today is guest host Grace Cunningham. Grace, how's it going? Welcome to your first hosted episode of Podward State.
Pretty good, excited to be here.
We got a pretty good app coming up for you. First, we're going to dive in just us three with Grace. We're going to be talking about two cool stories that she's had up recently. One about personal conflict of hers against asynchronous classes as a concept, whether they're good or bad. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the NUTmobile, NUTmobile, I guess. Just Grace has been one of our mobile connoisseurs on staff. Then we also had on staff photographer Mira DiBattiste and associate editor Mackenzie Cullen to talk about THON and sort of what we're going to be looking at for this year's THON. It is next week, folks. THON is now, not actually now, but it will be now soon. So we talked about them and got, I'd say, a decent picture about what THON is going to be like this year. And I hope you guys get a decent picture from it as well. And then finally, we closed it out by talking to staff writer and Penn State women's basketball beat writer, Rory, Pelella, to talk about the state of the Lady Lions. So with that being said, let's dive right into this segment here.
Grace, can you talk a little bit about the article that you wrote about the asynchronous courses and a little bit about what your experiences have been so far with having online classes?
Yeah, so obviously everyone's classes have been online recently and for most of the semester. But the semester 3 of my classes are completely asynchronous. Like there's no Zoom meeting time. I can do it whenever I want throughout the week, and I just have to get stuff in by deadlines, which sounds kind of nice depending on who you are and like how you learn. But for me, that does not work very well because I don't have self-discipline. I am a procrastinator. So it's been very difficult for me to stay on top of everything, and kind of weird that we're paying so much money to just kind of teach ourselves a lot of the information when we should be fully immersed in the classroom or at least on Zoom.
So Grace, in your article, you kind of wrote about how it needs to be the last resort and ways that Penn State professors that are using the asynchronous model can improve upon that. So what are some of those ways, and why does this format of teaching need to be held to last resort?
Yeah, I just think it's kind of weird that so many classes are doing so many professors are choosing to do asynchronous, because I feel like the only thing that would change anything is if the teachers have kids who are also learning at home and like they need to take care of them or whatever. Because otherwise, I feel like if they were able to make it to actual class at a structured time before coronavirus, I don't really understand why they can't do like just Zoom in from home now. Or even I know a lot of people have like pre-recorded Zoom lectures, but they're up to date. So like the teacher will record it at the beginning of the week and then you just have to watch it at some point. But all my classes aren't even like that. It's like there aren't even videos. They send like, hey, read this textbook and then like do this quiz. So the professor isn't doing anything at all. They're just like, my quizzes get automatically graded and I've never met my professor and I just like do assignments and pay when I could just Google stuff. I'm taking like a national park class as a gen ed. And I just feel like if I really cared about national parks, I could just Google that stuff myself. It's weird that I'm paying to just teach myself it just so that I can like get a degree at the end. It's very, very weird to wrap your head around.
Is that the RPTM, like geography of national parks?
It's like geog something. I don't really know what it is, but
see, that's a shame because that is a cool class where you learn cool stuff about cool places. And I have a anthropology of alcohol, booze, and culture that I'm taking, and like I'm learning a lot in it because Kirk does a really cool, really good job of teaching that class though, because he's passionate about it. But it's kind of just like I wish I was in person, like getting to interact with him and the other students. So it definitely is a shame to have this.
I have an art class this semester, which like sounds really fun. And if it was in person, I'd be so excited about my art class, like being in an art studio or whatever, even though I'm a very bad artist. But it's so weird because I'll be like sitting at my desk, like watercoloring. And I'll show you my watercolor that I did at my desk. It's horrible. It's right here.
For people on YouTube.
No, it's actually so bad, and I don't want to show it at all. But there it is. I'm not showing it anymore. That's the tree outside my house. But anyway, I did that sitting at my desk.
What grade did you get on it, Grace?
Oh, I got an 85, and I'm so mad. I'm actually so mad. I tweeted about this because okay, art is my worst class now, which should just not be a thing. And we had to do the assignment was like paint something that represents you. That was like the only criteria, and they didn't teach us anything about art yet. They just said that. So I was like, okay, I'll like watercolor a picture of my house because like that represents me. And then we had to write a little like paper about it. And so when I got an 85, I was like, okay, they must have like hated my paper. I must have like done it poorly or something. But then all the comments on my paper were like, this is so good. Love your title. Like, this is great. Like, wonderful. And then she was like, oh, like you didn't use watercolor paper and like your technique was bad or something. And I was like, obviously I did it like with my Walmart watercolor sitting in my apartment. Like, what do you want from me? So now I'm kind of concerned for the rest of the class. I have a assignment due this Sunday where I have to do like fantastical art, which is like, you know, like the picture of like the melting clocks, like that. I have to like do that.
Oh, like Dolly.
So okay. Yeah. So I'm kind of afraid because if she didn't like my watercolor of my house, I do not think she's going to like my fantastical art.
And that's one of your async classes, right?
Yes, that is one of my
Yeah, okay, so you have an async professor who's just like, all right, for this week, just like go be Salvador Dali.
No, it's crazy because the only thing that I like had to go off of was like textbook readings and a TED Talk. And the TED Talk was why people think that they're a bad artist. And then I got an 85. So obviously she also thinks I'm a bad artist. So yeah, I'm not happy about that.
That's tough. I mean, you would think like the least they could do for professors is to at least just like have class to try to do, you know, something, right? And you mentioned towards the end of your article, like all these different ways that, you know, professors are making things work, you know, like using social media or even having snack time during class. That sounds like cool, like taking a break together, you know, to sort of replicate that social environment. You know, it seems like there's so many different ways. Like, I know professors are probably under all these different, you know, pressures and everything and all that. Everyone is handling this different way. But, you know, you think the least they could do is at least just try to make it work the best they can.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to say there are so many professors that are doing like a really great job. It's just sucks that the ones that are asynchronous, I just got the short end of the stick this semester. Last semester, I had a lot of classes that did have Zoom, and I had a professor, he was, I forgot his name, but he was my political science professor. And every Thursday he would taste test a different cereal to like keep us engaged. And it was always like a weird cereal, and he was really fun, but sadly don't have any of those this semester, but it was fun. It was fun. He would be like, hey guys, like, guess what cereal we have today? Oh my God. And he also had a bird, like this little parakeet, and it would like sit in the back. I forget its name, but he would always talk about it and people would like ask questions about it. So like halfway through the semester, he set up like a bird camera inside the cage. And I don't know how he did this, but he like set up the Zoom that he could like switch from his like webcam to the bird camera. And we would like check in on the bird like during class.
Yeah, it definitely goes to the credit of the teachers that are making the most of this and really trying to keep their students engaged. I definitely have had a couple of those, and it's much better than doing the asynchronous. So shout out to those teachers.
Let's move on to the second big article you had up, Grace.
A more serious note.
Yeah, on a far more serious note, you wrote a plea to bring the NUTmobile to Happy Valley. In fact, it was officially an open letter to Mr. Peanut.
Yeah.
So first off, tell us a bit about your experience with the series of mobiles that have visited.
Yeah, so I guess there's a little mobile series going on. I actually, when the Wienermobile, which is the NUTmobile's brother, apparently, when that one came to campus last spring, I was actually supposed to ride the Wienermobile, but then I went home that weekend, so I couldn't. But a bunch of other people did. I think Lauren did, Dana did, Alyssa, Colleen, I think. So I actually wasn't there, but I do remember the saga. I've walked by the Wienermobile, seen it in person. But anyway, this semester, since I missed out on the Wienermobile last time, I really wanted the NUTmobile to come. So I wrote a letter to Mr. Peanut, who is the NUTmobile spokesman, I guess, asking him to come to Happy Valley. And yeah, luckily he saw it somehow on Twitter, and now the NUTmobile will be coming to Penn State pretty soon. Yes, I was wondering if he was gonna respond because I saw that he was kind of active on Twitter. I embedded some of his tweets in the post, so I was like, I feel like maybe he'll respond, but I didn't think that they were gonna change their like road trip course to actually come. to Penn
Yeah,
State. I was kind
just
of,
because of
I
you.
was kind of shocked. I know, just have so much influence apparently.
So do you know exactly what we should expect from the NUTmobile, or are you just as
I
excited?
don't know. I just responded to the email from Ahmed Ali this morning, and they said the NUTmobile will be coming on February 22nd, which is immediately after THON. So I will see how that goes. Probably might fall asleep in the NUTmobile, but they told me they want to take me around campus and give me some peanut swag. That's what they told me. So I do not know what that entails. They took the featured image that I photoshopped the peanut mobile onto and attached it to the email, and they said, hopefully we can make this a reality. So maybe we can park in front of the stadium and recreate that image for real. That'd be really fun. But yeah, I'm excited to ride in the NUTmobile. I think that'll be very interesting and a good story.
Awesome. And then they gave you a name too, didn't they?
Yes. They addressed me as Goober Grace. Yes, I am one of them now. So
now we're gonna move to our conversation that we had with Mira and Mackenzie about the upcoming THON Weekend and what people should expect from that. Followed by Rory coming on to talk about Lady Lions basketball. You guys joining us today to talk about THON 2021 is Mira DiBattiste, staff photographer, and associate editor Mackenzie Cullen. Guys, how you doing?
Good. How about you guys? Thanks for having us.
Doing great. Thanks for asking.
Nick, we're doing awesome. I think I can speak for all three of us. So yeah, THON, always a big deal this year, but I feel like maybe a tiny bit more understated, with the different, nobody's really sure what's happening unless you're kind of in the know, which you guys are both in the know as much as anybody can be, I think. Like Mira, for example, you're kind of been working with THON over the past few months, right? You're included in your org and everything.
Yeah, so I'm a committee member for the OPP Operations Committee, and I'm an LT for them. So what that means is that I'm usually a point of contact for my committee, and I facilitate bonding within the committee. And normally through a regular year, we're the ones that are kind of leading the setup and tear down process. But this year, we're just kind of focusing on bonding.
Mackenzie, you've been doing, a lot of good reporting with THON. You did the 10 questions series with all the THON directors. You kind of talked to really all the bigwigs for THON this year. I mean, how was that experience?
Yeah, it's been good so far. I mean, the only person I haven't talked to yet is obviously the executive director, Katie. And I think the biggest thing I've learned from all these interviews, I mean, some, I guess, depend on like when I talked to them, but at the time for some of them, they still weren't sure what they were going to be doing. But I think after going back over reading the posts, I would say that the biggest thing was that through each committee, they were trying to ensure that there was going to be really good involvement and engagement, not only just within like volunteers and their own committees, but across all of THON. And I know like one of the big things that they implemented this year was, or I guess one of the big things was the freshman involvement committees. And I think that was definitely a smart move. I wish it was kind of something they started earlier, just to give freshmen a chance to really understand what THON is and like the magnitude of from what it started to what it's become now. And I think it's something I wish I had as a freshman. I just remember being at the involvement fairs and all these different THON organizations. I'm sorry, they like would just yell at you and be like, hey, like come join our org. And I was like, I don't know what any of that means. But obviously these freshman committees, I think, are a really good move on THON's part, and will definitely give freshmen a chance to be involved and understand more of what THON, like I said, what THON is and like what it's become and how they can continue to be involved.
So I think one of the big questions so far this year that at least I'm wondering, and I feel like a lot of other people are, is what really we can expect from this year of THON. Obviously, it's going to be virtually. What is the format going to be like, and what types of events and performances and stuff can we expect to see?
It's kind of funny because people like have asked me that question. They're like, oh, what are we going to do? And I'm like, we still kind of don't know. Like, it's definitely a little bit more secretive than I thought it would be. But I have heard like through the grapevine that the entertainment committee is going to be in the BJC among a bunch of captains. So with that being said, like my theory is that the stage is going to get set up. I know that there's performances happening throughout the weekend, and they're keeping the live stream up from, I believe it's like 6 a.m. to midnight. And during that time, I know that there's performances. We're doing kids mail call, dancer mail, like all of the, like there's like a kids pageant. All of the things that like we love so much about THON are going to pop up in the live stream. And then I know that committees have a chance to do things for the live stream as well. So like OPP, for example, we do slides of strength every year, and obviously we can't do that this year. But we all went and filmed on separate days, and we all made slides of strength videos. We made mopping videos, and all those will be featured throughout the weekend. So it's kind of nice that we have the live stream set up in a way for like entertainment for dancers and families, but then also like featuring committees as well. It gives them like a really cool spotlight. But yeah, that's kind of the lowdown of what I know so far.
Who's really even going to be allowed in the BJC in the first place, right? Like, I think there was all sorts of talking like, oh, where are dancers going to be? Like, are they going to be in the BJC? Is it just going to be them? You know, so who's actually going to be allowed? Like, who's going to be present and manning that live stream?
Yeah, so I know that THON has their own separate live stream because we have 46 Live. They're a separate entity. THON has their own live stream. So again, like through the grapevine, I believe entertainment committee is going to be there. And I think another committee might be, I'm forgetting off the top of my head. But then captains are also allowed in the BJC. So they have to, or they're strongly encouraged to isolate for 2 weeks, get tested, make sure you're negative before you enter the BJC. And then they have certain shifts throughout the weekend. But there's no dancers, no families, no kids. And then I believe 46 Live is allowed in as well. I think I've been hearing that like through Dana and a few other people, but it's not like their entire organization. So the same way that committees aren't having all of their committee members, like it's just certain captains, that's what 46 Live is doing as well. So it's going to be pretty barren in there for a while. But then we have the cutouts as well. They'll be in there.
Do you have any cool stories or dancer features lined up that we should expect come THON weekend?
Or I have 2 interviews so far. One is with, I'm probably going to mess up his name, but he's the dancer relations director. His name is Nick Vici-Domini. I'm so sorry if I pronounced that wrong. But he was actually, or he is a THON child. He was diagnosed with, I believe, a form of either leukemia or lymphoma when he was like maybe like 7 or 8 years old. And he said this is going to be his 14th THON, and also his final THON as a student. And so I think featuring him is going to be really exciting. I know, or even just beyond like his THON Director Thursday post that I had written, I think there's such like a good story there, and just showing how much THON means to him as somebody who had pediatric cancer. And now it's almost like a full circle moment for him getting to be a dancer relations or be the dancer relations director. And I think like I can't imagine like anything that he's been through, but I feel like for him it's going to be like pretty emotional. And but I'm excited to talk to him. I think I'm going to be talking to him this week. And then also I'm going to be interviewing last year's homecoming director, Julia Greco. I just think that'll be kind of cool how she managed being in charge of all of homecoming for the last, or up until October of last year. And also how exciting it must be for her to get to dance in THON. And also I think I heard she's at like Hershey Medical, has some kind of position or like almost like a shadowship there. I don't know if she'll get to work within like maybe in that kind of sector of like pediatric cancer, but I think that'll be definitely a good feature to come to.
Awesome. Are there any just general like storylines, and Mira, you can jump in this too, just stuff that you're excited for or just like curious to see how it all turns out?
I know that like kind of what Kenzie was talking about, like same thing with dancers. I know like Onward State, like we're focusing a lot on dancers right now. And one of them that I was talking about, his name is Dustin Beaver, and he is coming to talk to OPP at like early hours in the morning. And he's going to tell us his story. But same thing, like he was diagnosed with cancer at a young age, was a 4 Diamonds child, and is now dancing in THON. And like hearing those stories, like always brings joy to my heart. Like I love when people get to do that. It's super sweet. And like I believe that he is dancing for the frat that was his like 4 Diamonds org. I believe, like I'm not positive on that, but I'm pretty sure. And I see that happen a lot, and it just like makes me excited that we get to talk to them like a little bit more than usual. And so I'm so excited to get to talk to him and see what ends up, what his story is.
I, of course, I'm like blanking now on some of the other ones people are doing, but I think we're going to have think what's going to be great about this year, especially for Onward State, is we're going to be able to focus a little bit more on the dancers, maybe than we usually do, just because there is so much happening at THON. And I think we hit, like, based on who we have lined up so far, I'm very confident in the people who are going to be interviewing some of these dancers, that these are going to be some really great stories. And I think that'll kind of be like a nice addition, kind of like I said, just to have, because usually there is such that focus on what's like actually happening at THON. And so I know everybody keeps saying this year is going to be very different compared to THON in the past, but I think it'll allow like for new opportunities and stories to kind of like emerge based on like what we're used to doing. So I guess like kind of the stories like I touched on, I said like I'm excited for, but yeah, like I don't know, I think I just have to like wait and see, like once we have those stories up, I'm sure I'm very, like I said, I'm very confident in our staff, like that those who are doing features are going to make them great.
Yeah, one thing for me too that I was actually thinking about as you were finishing up, I'm very curious to see, like, hopefully, 2022 THON like might be back closer to normal. And I was thinking about also the fact that dancers get to rest now from midnight to 6 a.m., which is obviously like a really big thing, very different. And so I'm wondering how many dancers will be repeat dancers in 2022 to like, again, like if we aren't in the same format, if we do return to the BJC, if we do return to standing for 46 hours, no sitting, no sleeping, I wonder how many people will be like repeat dancers. And I wonder if it'll be more than normal. Because I know that I have a ton of friends who are dancing, and a lot of them were saying like, I'm really excited, I can't wait to do it, but I wish it was in the BJC. I wish I was actually standing for 46 hours. And like, granted, I think it was a very smart decision to not make people do that alone at home, because the resources that THON provides and the DR provides, you're just not going to be able to replicate at home. So I think it was a safer option for everybody. Wanted to preface, but I'm very curious to see how many people will come back and return and try to do it again.
So Mira, one thing I'm also really curious about is how different has the planning been for THON? I mean, I'm assuming it's been astronomically different than it has been in years past, but like, how is the logistics of getting people together and like, okay, you're doing that, you're doing that. Like, how did that planning come together to actually make this year's THON happen?
It was actually really hectic. So back in October, November, we were still kind of like waiting. We were like, well, probably not, but like we didn't know like who was allowed to be in the BJC, how big of an event was this going to be? Like, even if it was online, like we knew that, but like our dancers in the BJC, like we had no idea. And student affairs didn't either. So we were just like, oh, well, so with OPP specifically, like we did a lot of our like prep work. So a lot of our like physical prep work. So like fixing dancer storage units, cleaning out blue storage, like organizing blue storage, moving things back and forth. That was done by our captains, which there's only 21 of them. And so for them to manage all of that alone is absolutely wild. And then same thing, like we did mat cleanings with the captains and all the LTs. So normally it's something that we do end of October, like early November. We go out to the ag place. Also, sorry if you hear my dog barking, but we head out to the ag center out by Beaver Stadium, and we take all the mats out. we like literally on our hands and knees, like scrub them apart and like, we're cleaning. And that's normally an entire OPP event. But this year it was just the captains and the LTs. And we kind of did that because again, like we didn't really know what was going on. So we were like, well, we want these things ready for like, if we need them. And then I remember like going into early December, we were still kind of like planless. Like we didn't really know what was happening. I know that a lot of directors were kind of fighting with student affairs and saying like, we need an answer like now, like we're 2 months out, like we give us something, like even if it's no, like we need something. And then so after winter break, stuff started to kind of get more clear of like, okay, this is concrete, this is what's going to happen. So it was funny because people were like, outside of THON, people were like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? And everyone's like, we don't know either. Like THON doesn't know yet. And it didn't all come together, at least for me, like from what I saw until like a few weeks ago. So it was very chaotic. And I'm very surprised that it pulled off as well as it did. And I'm, hoping that it'll be okay. But yeah, it was wild. Because in December we're like, hello, like student affairs, like please answer.
Yeah, when things are normally like basically done, you're still
yeah, long done. Yeah, so it's very interesting. But I think we did a really good job of like doing what we could and like wrapping it together, and then doing what we could as committees to make sure that like our committee members felt involved, our captains felt like they had a good year. Like it was a lot of like morale boosting internally for a lot of us. And so that's kind of, we just shifted to that like mid-year. We were like, all right, listen, like this is probably not going to happen the way that we'd all like it to. So why don't we shift to, like raising a ton of money, push your donor drives, like, talk to your family, like email a bunch of people, just like bug people. And then like get close to your committee members.
Yeah, I mean, just based on the interviews and like hearing people talk, one of my roommates is on the DR committee, and that's like been that's been like a really common theme, like just trying to show not only the volunteers, not only alumni, but also the families that THON is still there for them and that they do care. They want to make it the best as it can be despite the circumstances. And like one of the things was the family relations director, she talked about how before like some of the events, like for example, the harvest day that they typically have, they would send the package or a package filled with like different stuff for activities that they would typically do in person to the families so that they could still remain engaged in the events, even though they obviously had to be virtual. And so but like I said, that's like kind of the common theme, just showing that THON is still here, like it's still going to happen. Like Mira said, maybe not the way everybody wants it to happen, but they're definitely still going to try and do their best.
With THON being virtual, do you think the expected fund total will be more or less than years past?
We were actually talking about this with my roommates last night. I'm not sure, because on one hand, well, let me start with this. THON raises an absurd amount of money during the weekend. I forget what the percentage of it is. I don't think it's like 80 to 90%, but a large chunk of that total comes in those 46 hours for obvious reasons. Like, oh, it's THON weekend, I should donate. So people are obviously like kind of worried of like, oh, like, well, if we don't have this in person, like, is that going to affect the total? But I also think that there's been a larger push, especially like within committees and people who are involved, to like I was saying earlier, like really push your donor drives. And like we've had like kind of incentives too. So like OPP did a polar plunge. So like we wanted to raise $25,000 over the course of winter break. And we were like, hey, if we do this, all of the captains will go like, jump in a river and it's freezing, like they're going to go do a polar plunge. And so we like knocked it out of the park. Like we raised a ton of money. And so there's a lot of stuff like that going on. And I feel like people are getting pretty creative as well. Like I know that there's a lot of THON fundraisers that are doing like making bracelets or like making blankets or making this because people are sitting at home. And so when I look at that, I'm hoping that like we're gonna pass the 11,600,000 whatever number that we had last year. But then like on my other hand, I understand that people are having financial issues in the last year and people may not be willing to donate or may not be able to donate this year. So I don't know. I don't know which one's gonna win out here. But at the end of the day, like 11 million is a wild number to hit. And so even if we hit like 10 million again, like that's still an amazing number to hit. And so I think everybody's just trying to focus on like raising as much money as we physically can and being like super happy with it, you know?
Yeah, I agree with Mira. I mean, I do have faith like that it can at least come close to the 11 million raised last year. I think, at least for me, I was shocked because they took out canvassing and canning. I mean, canning, I guess, has been gone for a while, but with canvassing, I was like, oh my God, like what if they raise like less than 10 million? But I just remember at the total or the final reveal of how much was raised, like I couldn't believe like that, like I just couldn't believe it because I know it's been like in and around 10 million for the last how many years. And that's obviously the closest THON had been to raising 13 million from however many years ago. And so I do agree, like it is very hard to tell just despite the pandemic and obviously people going through like financial hardships and losing their jobs or whatever the reason may be. But I don't know. I still think I want to hold on to like that hope, like that it can at least come close to the 11 million raised last year, or at least in the 10 million range.
Right. And I think people are also really willing to like help one another right now. Like I feel like people are being a little bit more sympathetic than normal and like empathetic. And I also think that people are a lot more willing to donate like small amounts right now. Like I think people are being like, oh well, I want to help, but here's $5. And like when you do that 100 times, like that adds up really quickly. So I think that people are again like being very thoughtful this year because of everything that has happened. And so like Mackenzie said, like I also have faith and hope that we're gonna get, like if we don't pass the mark that we did last year, we're gonna get pretty close.
Yeah, no, THON's certainly going to be very different this year since it's all virtual because of COVID-19, but obviously a very, very cool special weekend for all of Penn State. THON starts on February 19th at 6 p.m. and will go until February 21st at 4 p.m. You can live stream at thon.com/livestream, and you can follow Onward State for 24-hour coverage from us. Mira, Mackenzie, thank you guys so much for coming on, and we hope you enjoy your THON weekend next week.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.
Joining us now is staff writer and Lady Lions beat writer Rory Pelella. Rory, how's it going?
Good, thanks for having me.
Let's talk real quick. First big news in Lady Lions world. Kelly Jaycott, who was kind of the star of the team, went down with an injury a couple weeks ago. Who's stepping up since then? How have the Lady Lions looked so far this season, especially after that injury?
That injury was huge. I mean, Kelly Jaycott was leading the team with points. She was averaging about 15.9 points per game. She's also leading the team in minutes every game. And she also, has a solid average with rebounds, 6.8 per game. So that injury was pretty big. There's obviously a big void to fill, but I would say the team did a pretty good job filling that void. They went on a 4-game win streak following her injury. And basically, Maddie Burke, she's a freshman. She's really stepped up. She can shoot the ball. She's starting to get a lot more minutes. And then also McKenna Marisa is huge. She's the floor general. She's always making plays with the ball. And then Jaelynn Cash, she's a monster on the floor. But she is now leading the team with points, and she's doing a great job gathering rebounds. I think the other day she had about 19 rebounds in one of the games. So she's been leading the team in that sense.
Yeah, you mentioned their 4-game run, and then ultimately last week last couple of days got hit real hard by Indiana University. What happened in that game, and what happened in the 4-game win streak that was going right?
Yeah, so big thing that happened in that game is Cash, her performance kind of stalled a bit. You know, she's had 7 double-doubles so far this season, and then against Nebraska, she tallied the season high 27 points, 19 rebounds, but that all stalled against Indiana on Wednesday. She had, I think, 5 points, and they were able to really limit her on the offensive end. So I think that was a big reason why things start to fall apart in that game. Obviously, if your best player isn't scoring the ball, that's going to be a huge issue. Obviously, during the 4-game run, they were really playing like a unit. I think one of the big things we've seen, obviously, like I said before, Burke has really stepped up. She's starting to come into her own. Marisa also has very much come into her own. Surprisingly, Anna Camden hasn't been, playing to her potential so far this season. So the group that's like gelling together right now is Burke, Marisa, Shea Hagan. She's an incredible threat on the defensive end too. She's leading the team in steals. She's always running down the court, keeping the pace. And then obviously Jaelynn Cash has been very dominant in that 4-game win streak, but like I said, she stalled against Indiana.
Jaelynn Cash won Big Ten Player of the Week last week. What can you say about her consistency or lack thereof until she heats up later in the fourth quarter?
Yeah, so this has been something I've noticed is sometimes she works her way into foul trouble. Sometimes she misses some easy layups, which a person of her height honestly should not be doing. But I do notice that she does have a tendency down the stretch in games. She really does come through for the team. She makes plays. She can make the layups at the end of the games and get those offensive and defensive rebounds that they need down the stretch. So she's really helping the team. And then like obviously their big wins like against Wisconsin, Nebraska, Purdue. She's scoring like 28, 27 points. She's getting double figures and then also double doubles with rebounds. So that's been huge.
So another big thing that you mentioned, Rory, that's really been sort of a blessing at times for this team is that backcourt duo of Marisa and Maddie Burke. How has that partnership worked so far, and what effects has it had on the team?
Yeah, so this is something I honestly didn't see before the season, but it's been a really pleasant surprise seeing the way they work together. Marisa is obviously a little bit older. She's a veteran, so she's able to kind of take her under her wing and show her the ropes. And honestly, they gel really well together. Burke is a threat from the 3-point line. The other day, she had 15 points, all from 5 3-pointers. So, and then she had a season high 7 3-pointers a few games before that. So she's a threat from behind the 3-point line. And then Marisa, she can work her way, dribble into the paint, make some layups. She also has like 74 assists on the season. So the two of them just, they're a dual threat. They can shoot the ball, they can drive to the basket, they can pass the ball. And most importantly, they can make plays. And that's exactly what this team needs right now.
So you mentioned Anna Camden, and she has had a lot of downtime this season. What plays into that, and what's going on with her?
This has been one of the most disappointing aspects of the season so far is Anna Camden. Last year, I was super impressed with her. She could shoot the ball like crazy. And also she's one of the tallest people on the team. So the Lady Lions are a really guard heavy team. And I mean, her and Jaelynn Cash are some of the tallest people. But I mean, she's not pulling her weight as far as rebounds go. She's kind of getting torn apart down low beneath the basket. And also she's not scoring the ball like from the 3-point line either. So you take that away, she doesn't really have much left to offer for the Lady Lions right now. And that's kind of been clear in important games down the stretch. Keeger's actually taking her out of the game and been benching her. So she did do well against Indiana on Wednesday. So hopefully she can, go on some sort of a streak and get her stuff together. But right now that's definitely been a disappointing thing because her, Higgins, and Marisa are the only 3 players who played last season for the Lady Lions. So I expected her to emerge as more of a leader on the court this season. And so far we haven't seen that.
So, I mean, obviously, Rory, one of the biggest stories to come out of this program over the past few years was the firing of longtime head coach Cookies Washington and the hiring of sort of, a rising star in the women's basketball coaching carousel. And that was Jaelynn Cash, former head coach of Marquette University, who sort of helped lift that program up from obscurity. At least they were obscure in the field of women's basketball. And now she's here. Last year was her first season. Now she's here again this year, sort of promising all these big changes. And she implemented a lot of those changes. I think, what was that saying that they had in the locker room or whatever last year?
It was either bring the juice or ignite the pride. Those are their two big things.
Yeah, so again, all these big promises that were made, and a lot of them implemented last year, but now it's her second year. Has Keeger encountered any sort of a sophomore slump when it comes to head coaching, or do you think she's still trying to build this program up? Because obviously this program is in a rebuilding phase. Like, how's that going, would you say?
Absolutely. Well, I would say actually she's not in a sophomore slump at all. Last season was very rough. She came in, preaching she wants to bring a culture change to the Lady Lions, and she certainly tried to do that, but obviously the season was very underwhelming. They had a 1-17 record in conference. So they only won one conference game, which is very disappointing. And then this season, she's been able to turn that around. I mean, already we've seen they've gone on a lot of different win streaks so far. We just had the four-game win streak. She's able to, get this team to an 8-8 overall record, 5-7 conference record, which is a major improvement from last season. And also she's doing this with a really young team. We have 8 freshmen and 4 transfers on the Lady Lions right now. And a lot of people are just seeing their first court time in blue and white this season. So like I said, we have 3 returning players from last season. So she's doing a lot. And I would say that for what she was, like, the cards she's been dealt with, she's been quite successful in her second season.
You mentioned that Keeger wanted to come in and have kind of culture change. And last week on the pod, we talked to DJ Newbill, and he chatted about kind of how he was there at the beginning of former men's head coach Patrick Chambers. And he said that when he came in, he wanted a complete culture change from the cellist, the past coach. And watching Keeger on the sideline, she really has kind of a similar courtside aura that Pat Chambers has. So hopefully she'll be able to get some of the success that he saw in the towards the end of his tenure here at Penn State.
Yeah, I think, one of the good things about the Lady Lions right now is that they are so young. And so this team has a lot of potential. And obviously, like with players like Maddie Burke, she's getting so many minutes right now as a freshman. The sky's the limit for her, and I think we're just only going to see improvements going forward with this team, and hopefully, some winning seasons are in the future.
We're looking forward to see what the Lady Lions have coming up. That was Rory Pelella talking to us. Thank you for coming, Rory.
All right, so that's about all we have for you guys. Peo, I'd say that was pretty fun chatting about the NUTmobile. We chatted about asynchronous classes. The Lady Lions, one of my favorite teams on campus, and THON is coming up too. So those pretty interesting conversations all around, I'd say.
Yeah, no, I had fun too. The first thing I did for Onward State, or one of the first beats I picked up, was writing about the women's basketball team. So I've been kind of checked out of them for a long while now. I was looking at the roster preparing for this, and I didn't see a single player that I recognized. So it was kind of cool getting a little refresher about what's happening with the team. And obviously THON too. Like, I had no idea what THON was going to look like at all before this conversation. And now I guess I have somewhat of a good idea, but obviously it's still they're still getting their things together for that. But it will be together for this weekend or next weekend. So hopefully everybody tunes in for that.
Yeah, and we'll definitely have a post-THON wrap-up and bring you guys some highlights and tell us about, just what was going on, some cool stories, some headlines, and that. Grace, you have fun hanging out with us?
Yeah, it was fun. I was kind of nervous, but I hope it was fun.
Once again, THON is next weekend. I made a mistake earlier when I was saying the live stream. So it is thon.org/live stream, and you can donate at donate.thon.org. And we highly recommend that you do, because THON's a really cool organization goes to a great cause. So it's been another episode of Podward State. My name is Sam Brungo.
Matt Paolizzi.
I'm Grace Cunningham.
See you guys. Have a good one.